Years after the Marshall fire, the gold rush is just beginning as out-of-state lawyers start showing up to get a piece of that action. They're racing in with the speed of NASCAR drivers, with some of the tacky on-body branding too, because Xcel Energy is a deep-pocketed defendant. Here's Marshall Zellinger.
A lawsuit filed at 11:43 in the morning makes this the 8th court challenge against Xcel for, quote, the harm they caused as a result of the Marshall fire. On Thursday, more than 100 people signed on to an existing lawsuit previously filed against Xcel, led by California-based attorneys.
Because it's a really good case. The really good wildfire lawyers in our country don't live in Colorado.
Benjamin David Petiprin is one of the out-of-state lawyers trying to sue Xcel and get families made whole after the Marshall fire.
We would not be pursuing this lawsuit unless we knew or wish we had some strong evidence that supported our conclusion that Xcel is going to have to be liable for the fire and going to have to pay out these claims.
His effort is a mass action lawsuit, different than a class action, where everyone involved might have to split a lump sum award.
It's done in a way that your claim is heard on a day by a judge or a mediator, and you'll get an offer on your damages that are different and particular as opposed to everyone else.
That's assuming they would win or settle the case with Xcel. Remember, investigators said Xcel equipment was most likely the cause of the second fire. Before that was announced, Xcel gave investigators a presentation trying to explain why it had no role, and also saying the 12 Tribes fire was causing damage before the second fire started.
By the time you even get to the second ignition, the first ignition is the one that's already spreading to Superior and already spreading to the areas that would unfortunately suffer a lot of damage in this fire.
Petiprin is waiting on what's called a progression report put together by hired fire experts to show when and where the fire burned.
That original report was not intended to, and they didn't really try to show the progression of the fires. It was more along the lines of like, here's where the fire started, here's what we think happened, and then here was the general outline of where it was.
But the report explaining the cause of the Marshall fire did not waver on 12 Tribes' responsibility. Yet none of the lawsuits are going after 12 Tribes or that insurance company.
A strategic lawsuit thing. We don't name 12 Tribes because we don't believe they have the money or the resources to pay our clients.
He points out that 12 Tribes will likely be brought into the lawsuit by someone, perhaps even Xcel. I want to say, I don't know if you could tell in that small phone screen, but I asked him about the hat he was wearing. It said Marshall Fire Attorneys. He said it's not paid for by his clients. That would be unethical. But, Kyle, that they're running a business and competing with other law firms to market themselves for clients.
Maybe this is a California thing that the attorneys run around with hats on, I don't know. I will say, give them points for honesty, like why is everybody suing Xcel? It's like the old thing about a bank robbery. Why do you rob the banks? Because that's where the money is.
This is going to be a good argument by Xcel, which we just played in that where's the damage? Where was the damage? Even if Xcel was responsible, who's responsible for the damage and the cost of all that? This is going to be intriguing. Different than I think what California is used to when it's pretty clear what happened in California, who's to blame and all that jazz.
Yeah, and of course this played out on the day of the fire in real time, because obviously Xcel's trying to figure out on that super windy day, is something going on with our equipment?
Yeah, the investigative report referenced a message which we brought up in our first report last month when we found out the cause, but it referenced a text message from a lineman who was at the scene who texted his supervisor. This is the actual text message. I think our lines may have started this fire east of El Dorado just for your situational awareness. We requested and got the body camera video of that lineman being interviewed as part of the investigation, where he walked back what he meant in this text.
Initially, with the lack of training and being an apprentice and driving by and not being able to look at it closely at that time, that's why I sent the text like that.
We are not naming him or showing his face. He's not accused of doing anything wrong, not accused of a crime. And since he's a lineman who may or may not have said something flip in a moment without knowing the full scope of things, that's something that can be decided by a court of law, not necessarily by us.
And it is interesting, though, as we start to see the inner workings of this, that even though it's been so long since the fire, we have not been privy to until now. Marshall Zellinger, thank you very much.